As we talked about the catastrophic events of the First Crusade in our previous video, a campaign soaked in both blood and belief, we saw how it forever changed the course of Christendom. It ended with a shocking triumph, the capture of Jerusalem and the birth of Crusader states. For many in medieval Europe, it felt like the will of heaven had prevailed. But what happens when that divine momentum begins to unravel? What happens when hope turns to confusion? Unity collapses into chaos, and kings return home in shame. Welcome to the story of the Second Crusade. A crusade born from desperation, led by emperors and kings and you. The Second Crusade, a tale of kings, chaos, and consequences, 1147 to 1149. The First Crusade had stunned the world by capturing Jerusalem and establishing 4 Crusader states: Jerusalem, Antioch, Tripoli, and Edessa. But the dream of a permanent Christian presence in the Holy Land was beginning to crumble. In 1144, disaster struck. The city of Edessa, the oldest and most vulnerable of the Crusader states, was lost to the Muslim warlord Zengi Atabeg of Mosul and Aleppo. He took advantage of Edessa's weak defenses, while its ruler, Count Jocelyn II, was away aiding allies. Zengi's army surrounded the city and launched a brutal siege. After a short but intense fight, the walls were breached and the city was captured, sending shockwaves throughout Europe. A cry for help. The papal response. News of Edessa's fall reached Western Europe and caused widespread alarm. In 1145, Pope Eugenius III responded by issuing a crusading bull titled Quantum Predecessoris, calling for a new expedition to recover lost territory. At first, the call met with limited enthusiasm, but that changed when Bernard of Clairvaux, the most famous monk in Europe, began preaching. His charisma and fiery sermons sparked a wave of religious zeal. Bernard inspired thousands to take the cross, and even 2 kings joined the cause, King Louis VII of France and Emperor Conrad III of Germany. This was the first time reigning monarchs personally led a crusade. The long road to the east, March of the Germans and the French Emperor, Conrad's journey, 1147. Emperor Conrad led his German army through Hungary and into the Byzantine Empire. Relations with the Byzantine Emperor Manuel I were tense, as he feared the Crusaders might seize territory for themselves. Despite mutual suspicion, Conrad's forces were allowed to pass through the empire. However, once they crossed into Asia Minor, trouble began almost immediately. In October 1147, at the site of the First Crusade's victory, the Germans were ambushed at the Battle of Dorylaeum. The Seljuk Turks used hit-and-run tactics, exploiting the terrain and the stretched, exhausted German line. The Germans were routed, thousands were killed or scattered, and Conrad himself fell ill. He was forced to retreat to Constantinople to recover. King Louis VII's journey. King Louis VII followed behind with his French army, taking the same route. He too faced distrust from Emperor Manuel, who rushed the French through his lands. Once in Asia Minor, the French fared little better. In January 1148, they were ambushed by the Turks at the Battle of Mount Cadmus. The French vanguard was separated from the main army, and chaos followed. King Louis himself had to fight for his life and famously defended himself atop a rock. The battle was a disaster. Many were killed, and morale collapsed. Louis, like Conrad, had to abandon plans for an overland march. Arrival in the Holy Land, spring 1148. Both monarchs sailed to the Crusader-held port of Acre. In June 1148, a great council was held in Jerusalem, known as the Council of Acre or Council of Palmyra. King Louis VII, Emperor Conrad III, King Baldwin III of Jerusalem, and the heads of the Templars and Hospitallers met to decide their next move. Though some wanted to recapture Edessa, the region was too far and deeply entrenched under Muslim control. The leaders instead made a controversial decision to attack Damascus. Damascus had previously allied with the Crusaders against Zengi, but now it was viewed as a threat. Many believed this move was political rather than strategic. The Siege of Damascus, July 1148. In late July, the combined crusading army, some 50,000 strong, marched to Damascus. The city was rich, fortified, and protected by orchards and water channels. At first, the Crusaders had success attacking from the west. They pushed through defenses and reached the outer walls. Morale was high, but suddenly, the leadership decided to shift the attack to the eastern side of the city, hoping for weaker fortifications. The move was disastrous. The eastern approach was dry, exposed, and better defended. The army lost cover, became disorganized, and faced stiff resistance. News came that a Muslim relief force was on its way. Supplies were running low. Panic and infighting broke out among the Crusaders. Accusations flew. Some claimed the local barons of Jerusalem sabotaged the siege to prevent outsiders from gaining power. Others blamed poor planning and pride. On July 28th, just 4 days into the siege, the Crusaders retreated in humiliation. The failure shattered their unity and credibility. Aftermath: a crusade in ruins. The failed siege of Damascus marked the end of the Second Crusade. Edessa remained in Muslim hands. Damascus became openly hostile. The Muslim world, once divided, began to unite. Emperor Conrad returned to Germany in 1149. His army decimated, and his mission a failure. King Louis VII stayed longer but achieved little. He argued with local leaders and returned to France later that year. In Europe, Bernard of Clairvaux, once hailed as a holy man, was blamed for the failure. He defended himself, saying the crusade had failed because of the Crusaders' sins, not God's will. Legacy and lessons. The Second Crusade ended in disarray. It showed that even mighty kings could be humbled by poor planning, internal division, and unfamiliar terrain. The failure strengthened the position of Muslim leaders, especially Nur ad-Din, the son of Zengi, who would rise to become a major threat to the Crusader states. It set the stage for an even greater crisis: the fall of Jerusalem to Saladin in 1187, which would trigger the dramatic events of the Third Crusade.